Hi there, and welcome back for another lesson for AP History. Now, while I am your APUSH Lady Boss, this is a lesson that will work for AP US, AP World, and AP European History. So I have been an AP teacher for over a decade, and I've been an AP grader for 5 years. I have my master's in American history. And what you're going to see here is my tried and true method for getting all students to be successful at rating the contextualization point. I hope that you can easily put this lesson into practice with your own students and that they will find success. So you have access to this lesson. Here's the written description, but I'm going to go through how I actually implement this in my classroom. So to start, I provide students with this worksheet. It follows along with the video on my YouTube channel, which is they can scan the QR code there if you want them to watch it individually. However, I usually prefer to show the video. Well, actually, I present it to them, but I think it's more well done if you engage in the lesson as an entire class. And so the first 2 pages go along with my video and the Google Slides, and then the third page is for extra practice. So provide students with the worksheet and then choose whether you want to present the information using the slides or whether you just want to hit play and then pause the video at appropriate moments. So to start, we go through the rubric. We describe what the College Board is looking for here. And then what I do is I put it into simpler terms. So I give us a smaller definition that's easier for students to understand. I describe the easiest way to earn the point by getting it in the introduction paragraph. And then I talk about contextualization while using dominoes as my example. So a lot of students grew up potentially playing with dominoes, or at least they're familiar with the idea that when you set them up like this, when you stack them up and knock one over, they follow through. So using the idea of kind of cause and effect, that the prompt is more of the effect, and if you can address the cause, the one that's going to knock it over, that can be a helpful way for students to understand what contextualization is. Another way that teachers often describe contextualization is using the word background, but there is a difference between background and contextualization. Background tends to be just the factual information that's happening, whilst contextualization actually links it. It describes the relationship between what is happening before and how that leads to or connects to what is happening in the topic of the prompt. So then I start the step-by-step guide to help students actually complete the contextualization. So there's a few different ways that some students have found success in thinking about it. Sometimes students latch onto the themes. So these are the themes of American history. And sometimes students think, oh, migration, oh, that's a good theme. I can connect that to the trends of what's happening in the prompt. Or thinking about the Persia acronym, especially zoning in on political, economic, and social trends. And for some students, this just still doesn't quite stick in their mind. And so helping them think about words that end in ION or ISM are typically going to be larger trends and broader context. So getting them just to think in those terms will help them brainstorm potential broader contexts. So then I move on to them actually practicing this skill. Now, when you go through this on your own or with the video, you'll see that it doesn't populate all at once, which gives you the opportunity to pause. So here's the prompt that I have students go through. Evaluate the extent to which transatlantic voyages in the period from 1491 to 1607 affected the Americas. This is the APUSH prompt from 2021. However, the content is covered in all the AP history, so it's great for practicing in any of these classes. So then what you want to do is allow students time to brainstorm. Pause the video, give them time, think about the context that are going on. Also, I want to reiterate here that this is really helpful if students if they already have an understanding of the thesis. And so I would not teach contextualization first. I would teach them the thesis point because they're going to be much more likely to write a good context if they understand that process. So then I provide a few examples of contextualizations, and then I describe 2 key things to pay attention to. They cannot double dip. If they choose to write about Columbian exchange in their body paragraphs, they can't also write about Columbian exchange for their context and expect to get points in both places. I also describe something called an absolute truism, which is one of the most common errors that students make when writing contextualization. They write something like this: during this period there was migration, and that simply is just much too vague. It doesn't show that they actually know anything about the period. They have to provide enough evidence to show that they know what's happening. All right, so I choose religious competition to use, but students can use whichever one they want. I then explain the formula that will get them the point. If they follow this and have historically accurate information, they're basically guaranteed the point here. And then I give them a sample thesis statement just to make sure they understand how important that link to the thesis is. So you would want to pause here and give students, again, practice to write a broader context. And then you can give them my example. All of this is color coded, and you can print it color coded as well, or you could just provide students with markers or highlighters. That works really well too. All right, then you want to have students evaluate contextualization statements. Again, pause the video when you get to this point, give them a chance to circle yes or no, and then provide them with the actual College Board information on whether this got the point or not and the reason why. You can do this for a second statement. But some of your students are still going to feel overwhelmed by this process. That's just the way it goes. Some students need a different way of thinking about it. And so then I have an even more scaffolded approach that really emphasizes the cause and effect. So first thing students should do is state the situation. What is the time and place? Provide the cause, and then the effect is actually also part of the link to the prompt or thesis. So sometimes having it look really simple like this and be something that's more easy to remember, cause and effect, that might be the trick that takes your students into the place where they feel they can do this successfully without that feeling of overwhelm. So that's the video. And that, like I said, goes through the first 2 pages of the student worksheet. But if you want to continue with extra practice, I've provided you with a second prompt. And what I really encourage you to do is have students work either individually or with a partner on this prompt. I do not encourage small groups because once you start getting into 3 or more students, there's usually one student who might be more likely to take a backseat and just listen versus being an actual participating, using their brain to think through it. Now, this prompt again is an APUSH prompt. However, you could change it to be about Spanish or French colonization, whatever you're focusing on in your class. It's an easy prompt to adapt. Give them time to brainstorm the context, use the formula, and then evaluate contextualization statements. There's no answer or there's no video to go along with this. This is just done on their own, part of that scaffolded approach. Now, the way that I would conclude this lesson is to gather the student worksheets and read the contextualization statements that your students came up with to the entire class, and then have them evaluate together. Read them anonymously to kind of take the pressure off, but then read them and have students evaluate and then give your feedback. Did they get the point? Did they not? And why? And if they aren't getting the point, see if the class can collaboratively come up with an easy way to edit the prompt or edit their statement to successfully earn the point. This is a really great way to realize that we're all in it together, that sometimes we struggle. Even students who seem like they've got it together don't always have it together. And we are growing, we're collaborating, we are going to learn together. And it really fosters that environment for your students. So I hope that this lesson plan is really helpful for you. I hope that your students find success. If so, I'd love to hear from you. And please stay tuned for more videos.